we're on a tight 40-minute window. So the introductions are done. I'm not going to go through the nuts and bolts. But just in terms of the questions, these are not questions that I've written them down. I think the UBS group has taken a lot of feedback and poll from many of you. And by collating all those questions, a set of questions which we thought were important were brought up. And that's what I'm just trying to crystallize and ask, just so that you have context. And if anybody has extra questions, we can have a question answer round. So for me to just start off with, right, I'll request Karthikeya for the first one. You know, one of the first questions and the most frequently asked question is, so what are some of the digital trends in procurement that you're seeing? And if you are able to also give any use case examples to say, this is what's driving innovation in the procurement space.
Yeah, thanks Raj. So first thing, I don't know who asked this question, but one, I would suggest this group, I don't know how many of you go to this Gartner hype cycle. There's a good report, okay. They release it every year about procurement solutions, okay. And the graph goes like, there is this innovation trigger and then this peak of expectations or something, and then there is a trough of disillusionment, and then this plateau of productivity. It's a good graph, please visit it, okay. It lists all the procurement solutions, where they stand, right. So that's actually quite good. Okay, so coming to this question, there are a lot of technologies, right? I think we discussed all this stuff in the morning as well. Okay, and there are a lot of buzzwords we keep on using, MI, AI, ML, NLP and all those stuff. So keeping that aside, I think the way I see it, one, there's a lot of tools that's helping us to become more what you call predictive analytics, right? This analytics is going to become more intelligent. Okay, I think there are a lot of tools on that. Okay, I think that's definitely a difference between the past and now. Another is all this chatbots and AI and other things, right? Again, in my opinion, some of them are actually also overhyped, but still I think there's a lot of good things, and the chatbots help us remove that barrier in getting back with responses. Okay. Then, as I said in the earlier presentation as well, right, the suite that we have, I think it's going to be further integrated to the complete value chain. I think today a lot of the suites are actually in silos. Okay, there is this finance, then procurement, HR, and other. At least some of them will get integrated. Okay, there will always be this room for best of breed. Don't get me wrong, but I think that further integration of the value chain is going to happen, and it's we are seeing it. Autonomous sourcing is one, right? At least again, there's a great presentation, so I'm not saying something different here, but in my opinion, at least all these tactical decisions and low dollar value decisions, I think a couple of years from now, I don't think people will be doing it, particularly all this 3 bid and buy and other things. That is going to just completely move to autonomous, and maybe over some time, the dollar value just increases.
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. Just to kind of keep taking the conversation forward, I have a question for Aakanksha. Really talking about, I mean, there's a lot of conversation around excellence in procurement or excellence in this particular function. Do you have any examples of what could that large picture look like, or that aspirational picture of how excellence could look like? And are there any examples within your organizations you think you can give which will help us understand that in a better way?
Sure, thanks Raj for the question. And you know, I'd like to share one of the actual statements that I heard from you know, a big conglomerate CPO in terms of how the future of procurement from a digitization perspective looks to him. And you know, it's very interesting, you know. So what he told me is that, Aakanksha, when I get up 4 o'clock in the morning and I look at my smartwatch, I should have a notification as to what's going well and where is it that I need you know, intervention. So essentially talking about a person agnostic technology. And I don't know, we are today probably very far off from that vision, but that's an aspiration from a real CPO of a real company in terms of how the future of procurement should look like. In terms of some of the real life examples, I think that I can talk about in my organization and in all my previous experiences. And again, just to maybe share with this group, I happen to be one of the lucky ones in the procurement space. I worked in the direct material sourcing with automotive companies like Honda, Renault, Nissan, as well as Schindler. And I've then had a long 9 years plus tenure in consulting, strategy consulting for multiple clients across multiple geographies. And recently I'm with 𝗔𝗄𝗿𝗄𝗃 Pharma to do the sourcing for their locks as well as categories. Having said that, so you can understand, I've seen a lot in all of these spaces in terms of direct materials, in terms of strategies, consulting, and also in terms of the pharma space more recently. So some of the examples that I can see, one is clearly on the contingent workforce that I talked about, which is a pain point across multiple industry segments, but that's where the tools are coming up, which give more visibility in terms of the headcount itself with their managers, with the start times, end times, and also the entire payment process. The other things on, again, the other thing is this entire platform that we have for source to contract, for doing the RFP events, which was earlier, manually done. Even today, in my organization as well, there are people sitting in different locks who are doing this manually. So within my organization itself, I am seeing that there is a difference in the maturity as well as the adoption of how we are using these technologies. Reverse auctions, again, is an area where a lot is happening, and we are having faster turnaround times in terms of the speed to value. So the examples are many. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but in the interest of time, happy to pass over.
Thanks, Aakanksha. I just want to flip the question for Swapna, more specifically given the experience that she is having from a Philips kind of a background. Is there a reflection on that question, same question around excellence in the procurement space, that you can give examples from Philips?
Yeah, so, am I audible?
No.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Philips is known for its innovation, right? So, we are one of those very early adapters of many, many new technologies that come into the market. Likewise for procurement, I don't know, today when I was just going around in the, in the areas for demo, I saw Philips on many of the screens already, which means we are probably piloting some of these technologies, or maybe already like established customers of these technologies. So there are many technologies that we are working on. For example, Ariba was we were one of the very, very early adapters, just giving an example, right? But this was almost 12, 13 years ago when we did our first auction, then when it was even like very new to our suppliers. So technology adoption in Philips is pretty much like in day in, day out, we keep looking, scouting what helps procurement to be more excellent. I think one, probably it's an industry-wide issue, or we all need to, as procurement professionals, we all need to look at it, is there's so many technologies, and actually thank you so much for all the technology partners, the procurement technology partners trying to address. But I still think there's a lot of gap, or there's a long way to go. How do we really still get to that single source of getting the data information, right? So if you look at the procurement process, how can we be better in forecasting? Only then I think we can be also much more established partner to our business. How can you really have a very firm P&L, impact? So there's a lot happening, and I think there are technologies. The underpinning thing is, with all these processes, so many technologies, how do we really get both process and technologies embedded? Once we get there, and I think it depends on every organization how keen or how passionate they are about investing in procurement, because that's where you deliver value.
Thanks, Swapna. I'm going to switch gears and come to Anant. And also on the topic, moving a bit away from digital, but just talking about overall supplier health. Do you have any perspectives on how you think about supplier health and the quality of required relation with suppliers, and why do you think it's very important?
In this growing uncertainty that is there, in this growing uncertainty that is there, we had a pandemic. We also saw some supply chain disruptions when the Suez Canal was blocked. What struck the most important point is that having a supplier relationship becomes very important. For example, Prashant DS in his presentation made a very important point, and similarly Ashwani also said that as in business, we need to we collaborate and we cooperate with each other. So if we don't do that and we only look at more than from a supplier, I think so the definition of supplier has to be changed to partners. So they are our business partners and they are the lifeline. The MSMEs are the lifelines for us also. So I think so the relationship needs to be more transparent, and that investment can only happen with sourcing tools, the way we make decisions, and how do we make a fair awarding to the partners.
Anand, just continuing on that, right? You talked about sourcing tools, and one of the questions I had for you there is, do you have any best practices or thoughts around the adoption of e-sourcing tools? Yeah. I know a lot of people have questions around SAP, Ariba, and a lot of other likes, but any best practices given what you do?
Yeah, see, many people say that execution beats strategy. So having a strategy of a sourcing tool is one, but how do you adopt it is very important. So first is that every buyer needs to be keeping this in mind, is that how do I improve my compliance? How do I improve my transparency? How do I build trust with the vendor? And that is one way of looking at it. So if you adopt e-sourcing tools, it will help them. It will help them to know how your decision-making process is. It is going to be fair to them. Another one important point is that the culture can be only incorporated. It is a world of e-commerce. There is Amazon, there is Flipkart. So now the new generation just clicks and say, I want it at a click of a button. So how do you adopt all of those technologies is also very important. And you can look at the low-end commodity spend so that you can categorize them, use a category tool for them to, and enable them to develop a platform similar to e-commerce within the enterprise so that it becomes easier. And also, an e-sourcing tool is a very good point. I don't know who made this point. I think so. Somebody, Ashwani or somebody made this point, very important point, that complex RFPs or RFX, how is the information derived? How do you get the complex informations? How do you build that transparency? It will help us a lot.
Moving forward, a question to Abhishek is, in the overall procurement function, how do you drive economies of scale? If you could give an example of anything done at scale, and then if you could make that point, we will be able to correlate.
Thanks, Raj. Quite a relevant question around today's day when we have such a unstable environment around supply, around sourcing, around direct material supply coming across. From my perspective, there are three very important elements that goes beyond the traditional parameters of procurement or sourcing. The traditional ones are value, scope, and timelines, right? Most of us would love to play around that. But these are the three very traditional ones used, and we all know how good they are, right? How good we all are in these three areas. But there are 3 more areas that are coming up, which are becoming more critical as we go forward. One is your own procurement team. You know, a good amount of time when you go with something strategic to your procurement team, you know, day 0, sorry boss, something new technical, bring your technical team. But really, if you bring a technical team, will the technical team have enough procurement ideas in their mind, or negotiation power, or a will, or a strength to say and push back on certain technical topics when they're having one-to-one discussions? No. And this is where your procurement team has to be equally brought to a certain level where they understand the technical topics. Okay. Now, me coming from a supply side, which is also handling direct materials, transportation, logistics, as well as supporting my own procurement team, I find there's a lot of times a huge gap between 2 of them on their knowledge skills. Somebody being very technical, somebody being not so technical enough. And this is where a level fielding field has to be built across both of them. My procurement team cribs and says, boss, malt, certain amount of quality, certain amount of moisture, is it good enough? Can you quantify? And somebody from my brewery saying, boss, this is a very good amount of pressure, please bring it in. And the communication happens, 2 days difference, we lost that malt and the variety is gone from the market. So from my perspective, the communication has to be very critical and your procurement teams have to be ramped up to be able to manage that part of it. The second part is your supplier themselves, right? The higher amount of transparency you bring to them. You know, the closer you keep them to their hearts, the better warned you are on the disruptions that you're coming in, right? How assured the deliveries are happening, the better is known to you upfront, and you can manage that depending on if you have backup partners coming in or more, you know, inventory you have in line coming in. So keep your suppliers the strategic ones. I'm saying not for all of them. 10% of your suppliers will be strategic. Keep them close to your heart. Look at what resources do they have. Look how good their teams are. How close the suppliers, where the suppliers are to them. So in overall, suppliers themselves are most critical in this sense from my perspective. Third, which is coming very critical now, is analytics. We are all good, you know, we are all great in minds, but numbers are very strong. And when you have crunches happening around that, they throw a harsher, more real picture to you and beyond the insights that we can perceive on our own. Okay, so just to give you an idea, my scrapping or my reusable assets across geographies are around $1 billion worth of capex every year. And then I have analytics coming in and saying, no, hold on, no, 1 billion is not a true number. You're spending not more than 200 million across geographies. So if you are spending that much of money, the complexity of my problem reduced down 80% because the real money, the real new capex that was spending on new type of materials, new type of glasses is only like 20% of your original problem. And that is something much more simpler to solve and work with versus 1 billion or an 80% much bigger problem you have over there. So those is one of the bigger 3 things for me: your own team, your suppliers, keeping them close to heart, and analytics for me are the 3 new areas that we'll have to work with.
Thanks, Abhishek. Hey, I want to ask a fairly different question to Swapna, something around sustainability. So, given some of the experience and background at Philips and being a world leader at adopting all things sustainability, I believe you have a case study which helps understand, maybe partially from a procurement mindset, but can you share that case study and help us understand what is it that each of us could do in relation to that?
Yes, Raj. So I think sustainability, ESG, is close to everyone's heart. And in procurement, I think we are all have the same responsibility on, you know, how we drive ESG or, you know, that commitment towards the company. But let me talk about a case study here. Philips has co-invented or, you know, let's say invested in some of the universities where you know, there are multiple startups can come and, you know, try creating, you know, a solution towards ESG. And one such case study was, I'm sure most of you must have heard about this company called Respire. So Philips co-invented in that and also invested. These are nothing but this company, Respire, it's a very startup company. They built they have a solution of concrete mixed with moss. So I'm sure you must have seen some videos around that. So you have, you know, you have even in a desert, if you go and build a building using this concrete walls or the concrete solution, it's mixed with moss. So which means you can make that area of desert, as bad as like nothing grows there, into a greenery area. So this is one case study, and I think in 2022, early this year, there was an award for this solution. I think the idea is to make every city, more greenery, so people have more, fresh air coming from these plants, and these are, I believe, very low maintenance costs towards, having these kind of structures. So cities like China, I think, where we did some pilots, has really given great results. So Philips, one is, of course, we have the standard, energy, renewable energy, and, the carbon emission reduction and all that. So these are very standard, but how we are also investing or, trying to build that capability within the startup communities to find solution for a healthy life, and, that's the purpose anyway of our company.
Yeah, thanks, Swapna. If I will take a few seconds to little expand on that, because I've read a report from a procurement angle, so what does that mean? And my takeaway in that conversation was, Philips is not going to make that happen just by itself. There is a massive dependence and partnership with the entire supply ecosystem across the world to make that a reality. And the question was, what works in the commercial world doesn't necessarily work in that world. So how you engage those suppliers, what is your relationship strategy? And then how do you do things at scale differently? Who are those strategic enablers? And what will be the terms in which you engage with them to enable that strategic outcomes? Because what you do in a commercial world will not apply same to same in that world. So there was a lot of relevance in terms of how procurement could make a differentiation role there. But thanks for that. I think it's a, like you said, it's a world-class project, and it received one of the best awards in that space. So moving on, I want to ask a question to Harsha. If you could give us any examples about, I mean, the question's really around AI and ML, but I'm going to see if instead of using technical language, if we can kind of use business language and talk about, are there use case scenarios of how that technology is coming into play in the procurement space? If you could share some of that.
Right, Raj. I mean, yeah, I try to stay away from those words as much. I don't like them myself personally. But yeah, I'll go from the easiest to the complex ones, which we have seen ourselves in our experience, with some numbers, what it makes sense, right? The easiest is, let's say, the invoice automation, right? Touchless invoice automation. We have done a good level of automation using RPA, meaning codifying each one of those invoices. But where really AI/ML comes into picture is, without having to train any of your existing invoices, using a lot of the model being trained on hundreds of thousands of invoices already, different templates, how can the system detect those fields directly without any training? Meaning tomorrow you can get started with an invoice automation solution. And the case study is primarily about, let's say there's an organization who's processing around 200,000 invoices in a year. How can you enable, let's say, 80% touchless automation without any intervention in less than 5 minutes? The invoice comes, extracted, matched, and this one. So this is one of the case studies of one of our customers where we have seen good level of automation in terms of invoice. And the way it is being done without using or having to put a lot of training efforts on the invoices is using, let's say, AI/ML, right? Some portions of deep learning technology. Second thing what I have seen using is, there's another customer of ours where they process every day hundreds of requirements keep coming to their procurement team. They'll have to process it. Their TAT for processing a requirement to a PO was around 6 to 7 days, around that. So out of each one of it, let's say we have seen a use case deploying a algorithm which, with, let's say, learning from your last 5 years data, how do you process those requirements to the right supplier, send out the inquiries, get the quotations, negotiate based on your category excellence and excellence. So tail spend, primarily in tail spend, because complex categories are a lot more. So tail spend automation of up to 80-85% of your requirements just by using your data, internal and external data, is another use case. It frees up a lot of bandwidth, right? Like one of our panelists also told, a lot of these low order value items can then be automated. We don't want to spend time there. So that's a case where we feel another use case. We have seen success. The last use case which I want to talk about is how do you forecast these non-contracted, non-recurring tail spends, right? Using, how do you predict what I'm going to come, what is going to come in the next 15 days, what is going to come in the next 30 days. So what we have done there is, for a customer on a pilot, we have taken 5 years of their data, used 4 years for training a model, and the last year for comparing how the algorithm, how accurate the algorithm is predicting. And then we have compared the predictions versus what they have done in that particular year. And we were surprised to see close to 93% of accuracy in terms of predicting in that particular range. It was difficult to do it on the exact date, but if you put a range of, let's say, 15 days, next 15 days or next 30 days, this is what you are expected to buy, and giving this information to the users so that the firefighting or the pressure on procurement goes down, or the pressure on supplier. Even taking into consideration what is the time the supplier takes to quote, the supplier takes to deliver, and accordingly preempting them to be ready for that particular requirement. That's one great number. So these are top 3 case studies which we have, which have seen the applications of AI, and yeah, there are many more which keep coming to us.
Thanks, Harsha. One question to Sandeep is, you know, there's a lot of dynamism around the market in terms of the ups and downs. There's a lot of organizational interest in terms of how you engage, what are the legal terms, how do you write the contracts. So are there any pointers that you would like to give around or best practices around how to safeguard organizational interest in such contracts?
Yeah. So basically, the recommendation here, when it comes to contract management and this is more of going into a standardization. I mean, assume that you're starting from scratch. You may have your past contracts, but based on those contracts, if you could standardize all your terms and conditions, make them into a kind of library approach so that it becomes a reusable component of your contract. That can actually reduce your overall time of contract drafting and negotiation, because like I said in my presentation this morning, that pick a category and then your system is good enough to tell you that, for a certain category which is of, this type, your contract should have at least these things, because they are very important for that particular category and you cannot miss it. But if you leave it to the person who is drafting the contract, it's very likely that they miss it. So standardize all your terms and conditions, all your clauses, your templates. So slowly start building over time. And even with AI kind of capabilities where, I mean, you may have done digitization in the past 3 years, 5 years or 10 years, but you may have legacy contracts that once digitized again into the system, AI can help you do the same thing. I mean, like Harsha said, it can go and track all your previous records, the way you have been drafting your contracts for a given category. It can kind of, self-learn and then help you standardize the process. Once standardized, you of course get benefit of all this digitization with analytics and any other technology that's out there.
Thanks, Sandeep. Hey, I'm going to extend that same question to Anant, more specifically because from an Infosys example, I heard you talk about implementing something like this at scale. So do you have ideas or best practices in that space?
Yes, at Infosys we have implemented a contract management system. What we do at Infosys is that we look at 4 or 5 parameters when we are looking at the contract. Is that what is the period of the contract? Because contract cannot be for a longer duration, because in this uncertain, COVID has taught us a lot. And we have seen that we need to adapt to that. And Ashwani made a very important point. He said that your force majeure clause has to be changing. So that's one point that we have to now go back and reconsider. That's a good point that he made. But what is the period of contract? That is one thing that we look. we have a very clear scope of work that is defined. What are the SLAs that are there? And we monitor them regularly with our vendors. And the third point that we always see, that we always look for an exit clause, which helps the supplier and us to create a win-win situation. So if at any given point of the time, if the supplier wants to exit or we want to exit the contract, it has to be mutual. So that's how we look at it. And our contracts also talks about audits, so that there are regular audits on the various statutory, as well as we are also now trying to incorporate the sustainability clause in the contracts. So because that is becoming one of the key pillars of the contracts also. So.
Thank you. Hey, how much time do we have? All right, I'll have that one last question, and this is going to be a combination of both for Karthik and Abhishek. Any suggestions on how do you track the ROI for the digital investments made?
Okay, and that's a great question. Okay, in short, right, again, conceptually, why do we do digital transformation? What are the benefits we want? Process efficiency, process compliance, customer satisfaction, right? You can have also reduction in the time to serve, but let's leave that out. So process efficiency is very clear, right? The CFO is going to ask you how many people you take out when you implement a software or something, right? Hit the FTE count, okay? And then you say, oh, this is the cost you're reducing the team or whatever. And then say, okay, this is the benefit, this is the cost, do the ROI, right? And that's very easy for a P2P side, particularly transactional processing, right? It's very easy. On the S2C side, I don't think we are taking people out because we are implementing a software, okay? There, I think it's more into process compliance and customer satisfaction, right? So that's where it becomes a little tricky. It becomes a little gray. So whenever you do a larger, say 10 tools or 10 areas, typically wherever you are very clear, I think that's where you say, okay, the ROI is here. Already the 4 is actually compensating you, but give me for the other 6 as well, okay? But again, all this process compliance and other things also yield results, but it's not very clear, right? Say e-sourcing or e-auction. You can always say, hey, technology is giving us this one. It's giving us visibility to the past and all the stuff, but it becomes tricky to have those conversations. Okay, we can do, again, we come up with all those nitty-gritties, assumptions to come up with some ROI, but it's not as clean as where it is in the transactional processing.
Thanks, Karthik. So from a supply chain perspective, there are 2 aspects of the ROI, what we call across is. One is from the procurement perspective, right? When they calculate that according to the current rules and formulas, this is the amount of ROI you're looking at, 1.5, 1.7, 1.9, 2.3. So those are the number of years that you recover your investment into it, right? This is one part where procurement predicts and follows across. For me, the most important part is that formula that is built on which this ROI is being calculated, right? The anchor point is, what is the P&L benefit that you bring in across? Can you give back the money, the savings, or the new value generation that happens back to the company? And is there a way to be able to calculate that formula which impacts and calculates that part of it? It's great for all of us to be able to say if there are intangible assets or intangible benefits coming into it, but can you put a dollar value it? And most of the times, the answer is no. There is a need to be able to build a formula to this part of it. Now the question comes is the intangible assets to be ignored? No. But then the intangible assets have a different KPI called NPS or Net Promoter Scores. And that is where you need to bring that part onto the picture as well to be able to capture the non-financial benefits coming out of it. So from my perspective, we have started adopting this across all our geographies. One part is ROI, and we have put some of the criteria. As of now, all of those KPIs are being tracked, ROI being reported against the original number that is impaired. And believe me, it's very hard for us to be able to maintain the original ROI that was predicted. But the good part is the NPS score is improving as we go forward. Our people are happier. The ROI may not met. It's maybe more than what we originally part. But with NPS promoters coming in, the scores are getting better. The people are happier, and it gives a lot of efficiency to our procurement teams to create a higher value chain for themselves as well. They're not more into transactional issues. They're not more into calculating and capturing ROI anymore. It is done automatically, so they're able to focus more on higher value chains over here. So for us, ROI is important, the number is important, as well as the net promoter score is becoming important day by day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think we're up on time. Is there any question for the panel before we can wrap up for lunch?
Thank you, everybody. Very interesting session. My question is towards digitization on contract management. We know with, we have a lot of contracts that are very tenured, but like, probably there's, whenever you look at a digitization, you want to see what's the term of that contract that we need to really look at. We have tenured, vendors in the system, and every time you make a new contract, it's actually amendment to so-and-so. I am sure you're getting that point. So what is that point where you say, I will not continue with an amendment, but I will go in for a new, contract? Is there any form of digitization that you have done that would help us as well on the contract management?
I think from contract management, it can help you take decision, but I don't see, how we can recommend whether you should do an amendment versus a new contract. Right, so with the right set of data that's there in all your live contracts and looking at the amendments that you have done, some amount of AI can help you find out the information, but I mean, that's the way I think we should look at it, rather than completely saying that system is recommending you do something like this vis-a-vis this. So we can help you gather all the data points. We can help with the analysis of those contracts, the renewed contracts versus the amended contracts, and show it up to the user. But then ultimately it's up to user whether they want to renew or amend or create a new contract, because I mean it's all on the, there could be multiple reasons, I think. And if, did I answer your question completely?
Maybe she didn't get what she was looking for.
I'll complement your question. There are, if you have to change a contract, we should not, what I personally do is that I don't look for more than 3 amendments to be done. And I personally go through my contracts. My procurement team goes through the contracts, and then they decide if the terms are significantly changing or we need to change, then we say we go for a new contract. And we just take that path. But that's a very, that's a very daunting task that we have to do. But if it is for the good of the organization, we should do it. And we take the suppliers along with it. And more than us, the suppliers are willing to do a new contract, because it also helps them open up their points. But we need to balance it out. What's important for us and what's important for them.
Hi, I can add to it. So, and this is out of my experience in my current organization, right? So we have a structure around third-party risk management, which sort of lays out, the tenure at which MSA will be active, and the durations are sort of defined. And post that, then the entire process need to be repeated again. So there is a questionnaire that needs to be filled by the business user in terms of, their requirements are changing, how are the entire, the entire landscape is looking like, so that it is by default that after those defined duration or the number of years that a contract, the entire process will need to be updated. Yeah?
All right.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great discussion on digital transformation. This question is for Harsha. So this, autonomous RFP process, online reverse auctions, are they really giving us benefits in cost savings in terms of, better prices? Because normally these vendors, they feel that the personal touch is not there, and they've been treated as, somebody else. So are we really getting, cost savings through this?
Tools are actually not giving the cost savings, sir. Tools are helping the procurement category managers to do it a lot more easier, right? So the primary thing is, let's say, example, I'll give you a parallel example. I spend about 1 hour giving a demo or, talking, explaining about the product or something else. But the real value, what I need to provide in that sales process is probably only, let's say, the pricing discussion or the strategy discussion or the ROI discussion. A lot of these things, if let's say a tool is doing it for me, then I can do more such deals. I can close more such deals, right? In the similar parallel, all the procurement, auctioning tools or autonomous sourcing tools or any other tool, right, is helping me do more. Whether it's reverse auctioning, I mean, there are multiple ways in which people are leveraging it. And of course, there are cost savings which are actually written down. ROI is coming much better than what we have estimated as well. It is a difficult thing, but if you're category focused, I think many organizations have received and they're becoming a norm right now. They don't want to do it without it. But end of the day, procurement managers are very, very happy because it is helping them do more than what it is. So it's finally the category managers getting the savings. Tools are just helping them do that. And I would say very few cases, very few cases where, there is a failed implementation, they have not been able to achieve this, but that's less than 10% is what I could say. In our experience so far, of our clients and clients who have gone with our competitors, they've still always ensured that they reach their ROIs or, reach their cost savings so far. This is what the market says. Anyone from the industry?
Maybe I can just add, I have seen the other way around. I have seen suppliers seeing us being more transparent because we are using tools which treats all suppliers, or let's say, you are inviting for RFP, all contenders of that RFP are treated same. The information that goes out in the system is almost the same unless you do something differently. But I think I have seen how suppliers are actually accepting the way technology is used in RFP.
It's a very good point from an Indian standpoint. I've been a buyer myself and I've been a seller myself to a lot of enterprises before. Maybe it is not there anymore, but I'm talking about 3-4 years before. It was not transparent. For me as a supplier, transparency was very, very important on how I was being evaluated. This actually makes our lives as suppliers a lot more easier, on how we are being evaluated, what we are being evaluated against, and why I did not get a particular deal so that I can improve upon the next deals. Very valid point, actually.
Just to add one point, right? I think e-auction definitely, but just on this autonomous, right? The way I see it, like even when we do this PR to PO approval, right? You have this threshold saying, okay, below this don't come for approval. It's fine, right? Because you say that, okay, it doesn't. The cost of actually going through and approving is actually not worth it. It's okay if they do it. I think the way today, again, I see this autonomous also is like that, where you say, okay, the low dollar value, we do a lot of low dollar value. It doesn't make sense for me to spend time doing the 3 bid and buy and other stuff. It's okay to take a decision. There's going to be some error, that's fine. Okay, but then just by on average, I actually get benefit. Okay, so today there are some of our clients where we do it for less than say $500, $1,000, okay, and mostly in developed countries. I mean, actually not much in India though. But there actually it makes sense. The cost of actually trying to do a process there actually is there. But over time this is going to go up. The dollar value is going to go up.
Okay. All right.